shot the dog. They shot the dog.
A federal agent has been shot and killed in a confrontation with a fugitive in North Idaho.
You know, the word racist itself is a good word. It means proud of your race.
We need this for one man, his wife, and his kids in a cabin?
Come on, get a grip, people!
Weaver wanted to die.
I just wanted to kick the door down so I could take a couple with me.
You want to know how many are still alive up there?
Vicky is dead.
Somebody got away with murder.
And there was blood all over the floor.
There were going to be no heroes on Ruby Ridge.
In 1971, Randy Weaver and Vicki Jordison are married in Fort Dodge, Iowa. All indications point them towards a standard Midwestern lifestyle, but the Weavers want something different.
Well, back in 1980, I guess it was, we started thinking about moving. Sarah was going to go to school, public school back in Iowa, and at the time we weren't real thrilled about that.
At that time in Iowa, parents were barred from homeschooling their children. Angered by what they view as a corrupt government, and with their religious views growing more outside the mainstream, the Weavers decide to live a life of isolation in the mountains.
We thought it'd be nice to move to the mountains and raise a family, try to raise one out in the mountains, and teach kids at home, and we were just going to do it. Prepared for about a year, got our bills paid off, sold the house, got all our ducks in a row, you might say.
In August of 1983, the Weaver family leaves Iowa and the rest of society behind and heads west.
We weren't sure exactly where we were going to go, but we figured in the Rocky Mountains somewhere.
The Weavers finally settle in northern Idaho. The small logging village of Naples has always been fertile ground for people living outside the mainstream. First, as a destination for back-to-the-earth hippies. Then in the 80s, the Weavers are part of a wave of right-wing survivalists.
People up here care about each other and are tolerant of each other. I think they enjoy each other's differences.
The Weavers pay just $5,000 for a rocky hilltop plot of land where they build this plywood cabin primarily out of scraps from lumber yards. And like many families in Naples, they raise animals and grow their own food. It was an idyllic life for the Weavers' children, Sarah, Sam, and the youngest, Rachel.
This used to be a garden. I didn't realize how good I had it then, but I do now. I hope my kids get to experience it. You know, it doesn't sound as fun as it really was, but I guess you'd have to grow up that way.
As time passes, the Weavers' views move even further to the right. Their mistrust of the government increases, and the family's religious beliefs become steeped in thoughts of Armageddon and racism.
You know, the word racist itself is a good word. It means proud of your race.
He got told a few times that the people just didn't want to hear his political views.
He did come in and express his views about blacks and Jews and anybody that was not of the white race. You know, kind of gave me an idea that he was a little bit out of the mainstream.
Get the heck out of here! I didn't come all the way down here to...
But the Weavers are far from alone in their beliefs. Elsewhere in the Pacific Northwest, the white movement has become militant. A right-wing terrorist group calling itself The Order has gone on a campaign of violence, bombing banks, hijacking armored trucks, and even murdering a Jewish talk show host, all in the name of a new white homeland. After The Order is finally brought down, law enforcement quickly turns its attention to the Aryan Nations, the neo-Nazi political group where The Order had its genesis.
So we were very aggressive in our investigative efforts against these individuals and did everything we could to infiltrate the organization with sources of information.
The FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, as well as state and local law enforcement, were all converging on the Aryan Nations. And in the wake of the recent terrorism in the Northwest, Aryan Nation's headquarters, located just 70 miles from the Weaver cabin, is inundated with paid federal informants.
One race, one vote, one nation, one people, one homeland. We're going to have it.
Each summer, the Aryan Nations holds a weekend retreat for its members and possible recruits. It's 3 days of speakers, events, and Nazi pep rallies.
They call it a World Congress. It's a gathering of white separatists, some of them supremacists, people with that philosophy, basically.
And it's at one of these congresses in 1986 where a federal informant posing as a gun-running biker and using the name Gus Magisano begins a 4-year relationship with an unassuming attendee, Randy Weaver.
I didn't have any idea the scrutiny that they were under by the federal government this Aryan Nation's place.
Over the next few years, Magisano slowly builds Randy's trust and offers him $700 for 2 sawed-off shotguns. In October of 1989, after sawing off the barrels himself, Randy Weaver sells the guns to Magisano. But soon after, Randy abruptly ends the relationship after learning that Magisano is actually a snitch. The ATF is now without an informant. So, with his connections to the white movement, a clean military background, and an arrestable offense to use as leverage, the ATF looks to replace Magisano with Randy Weaver.
Then I was approached by his bosses and said that they would bring federal firearms charges against me unless I joined their team, basically. And I said, well, I was not going to join their team and become an informant, and therefore they just carried it on from there, and it got blown out of proportion after that. If I had to join their team and become a snitch and start working for them, none of this would have happened. Vicki and I was going out. We had a snowmobile down to the county road, and right there on the Blast Bridge, there's an old Chevy pickup with a cab-over camper on it.
Posing as tourists with an overheated truck, ATF agents wait for Randy and Vicki to come and help.
As soon as I had my hands on top of the radiator and my foot up on the bumper, this guy reaches around and grabs me right here and says, "Freeze, federal agents!"
1 full year after selling the illegal guns, Randy is finally arrested. During his arraignment, he is allowed to sign over his property as bond. But the part-time federal magistrate mistakenly tells him that if found guilty, his property will be taken away. And with their paranoid fears now seemingly proving true, the Weavers decide that rather than facing their destiny in court, their only option is to stay on the mountain.
It wasn't just Dad. It was our whole family. And we didn't want him to go down because we figured they'd put him in jail for, sawing off shotguns, and we'd rather, stay on the mountain and live with our family, happily than have it be torn apart. But I guess that backfired.
Then we heard on the radio that the white supremacist Randy Weaver, blah, 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 didn't show up for court, but the U.S. Marshals will get their man.
Once Randy fails to appear in court, he officially becomes a federal fugitive, and his case is turned over to the U.S. Marshals Service. But unlike most cases, the Marshals know exactly where Randy is. In fact, the Weavers refuse to leave their hill, even for food. And it's during this time that they gain the support of a small group of local sympathizers.
The first day I went up there, I needed to know, did he or did he not saw the shotgun off? And he told me he didn't.
Randy and Vicki turn their holdout from the law into a moral stand. They believe they are victims of religious and political persecution at the hands of an unjust government.
I felt that Randy was being picked on because of his religious and his political views. And if it happened to Randy, it could have happened to me.
Vicki begins a letter-writing campaign, making clear their beliefs to friends, family, and even law enforcement.
She wrote one to the prosecutor, maybe, and she called them servants of the Queen of Babylon, which they are. They still are, the whole bunch of them. They're all servants of Babylon. She just made them all mad as hornets. I was proud of her. Still am.
But the letters do little to help Randy's cause, and in April of 1991, the Marshal Service sends the case file, including Vicky's letters, to a psychologist. They are sent back a psychological profile, mistakenly referring to the Weavers as the Randalls, that paints an extreme picture of a paranoid family led by a fierce matriarch who are all ready and willing to fight to the death. As the months pass, the Weavers remain holed up on their remote mountaintop, and the Marshals, hesitant to approach the cabin for fear of a possible confrontation, continue sending messages through friends. In October of '91, in a small guest shed on the Weaver property, Vicky gives birth to their fourth child, a baby girl named Elishaba. With winter approaching, the family prepares for the long months ahead, and with plenty of more pressing cases, the Marshals leave the Weavers alone on their hilltop.